voice is louder than the microphone. I hate to interrupt everyone's lunch, but I wanna first introduce myself. I'm Sharon Glotzer. I'm the Anthony C. Lemke Department Chair of Chemical Engineering, and I am so thrilled to welcome you all here to our alumni luncheon. This is just an amazing turnout of alums. I mean, we always have a lot of alums here. Apparently, this time we have twice as many alums in the room. And that's just such incredible show of support for the department. We're so thrilled to have you all here. Now, in past years, I remember there were fewer, and we would go around and everyone would introduce themselves. If we do that, we'll be here through dinner. So instead, I want to just highlight a few things. So first, we have a reunion group here from the class of 2013. Where are you guys at? Yeah. 10-year reunion. Welcome back. And we also have 5 alums here with us who graduated over 50 years ago. And I want to call them out, and if you're here, please stand up. 60. These are the years ago they graduated. Get out of here. Graduating 68 years ago in 1955. Yeah, that's right. Eugene Prashant, are you here, Eugene? Welcome back. Eugene's father was, wait for it, a 1931 graduate of our department. Tali Siparitis, 65 years ago. Welcome back. Also graduating 65 years ago, Chandrasekhar Kakarala. Is Chandrasekhar here? Nope. Okay. 58 years ago, Don Ray in 1965. Is he here? Nope. I know who's here. The next one's here. 58 years ago, our very own longtime member of the faculty enjoying his emeritus years, Bryce Carnahan. And finally, Max Pettibone graduated in 1968, 55 years ago. Is Max here? No, well. Well, welcome back to all of our alums. I'm going to give an overview of the department, a brief one, but before I do that, I want to introduce our guest of honor here today, who is the 2023 Michigan Chemical Engineering Alumni Merit Award winner, and that's Mike Maten, a 1993 alum who got his bachelor's degree with us in 1993. Mike is the Director of EV Policy and Regulatory Affairs for General Motors. He currently leads GM public policy work on electric vehicles, EV infrastructure, and EV battery supply chain topics. He worked in the electric propulsion space for over 12 years as part of GM's product planning and strategy group. He led the advanced planning effort for GM's next generation of battery electric vehicles, including the Cadillac Lyriq, the Hummer EV. I love Hummers, but they're so big. And the Chevy Blazer EV. Michael has worked all over the globe for GM on vehicle electrification and portfolio strategy projects, including a 3-year assignment in Germany with GM's former subsidiary Opel. I had an Opel GT. That was my first car in high school. The little Opel GT, like a little yellow one with black racing stripes, looked like a tiny Corvette, and my license plate was Little Vet. God, I miss that car. My mom was so mad when my dad and I came home with that car, because she's like, go out and get her a practical, safe car. And I came home with this tiny 2-seater. Michael's first job after graduating from U of M was as a process engineer and automation expert for Sun Chemical, a manufacturer of printing inks and organic pigment. pigment. He also holds an MBA from the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. And now in his career, he's heavily involved in chemical engineering and material science discussions in EV policy at GM. Mike's grandparents were alums, and his brother is an engineer. His sister-in-law is a chemist. Mike, like many of you here, interacted with Scott Fogler. He worked with Professor Scott Fogler on computer simulation programs and understood early that chemical engineering had very broad applications and opportunities. He was at during the Fab Five and Desmond Howard Heisman era. So that was a big part of his experience, and we've selected him for this year's Alumni Merit Award for his contributions to vehicle electrifications and the impact that you've had as a Michigan Wolverine engineering alum. So please join me in congratulating Mike. We have swag. Okay, first is the thing. Okay. Let's hold on. Okay, you're supposed to hold that. All right, and there's something else. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. There's a bag. And very own awesome.
Oh, look at
Michigan
that.
Chemical Engineering fleece.
All right, thank you. Love it.
And it says, turn around, it has the
125.
125 years.
Wow. All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Oh, there's actually a fancy award dinner tonight for him. But first, we've asked Mike to just say a few words about his career.
Thanks. And before I get started, I'd really like to thank the staff here and Sharon for recognizing me with this award. Thanks to Sandra, thanks to Sheila, thanks to Lori, thanks to everyone who's made this event possible. The University of Michigan has always held a special place in my heart. As Sharon said, my grandparents actually graduated from here in the 1920s. My grandmother was class of 1926. One of the first classes of women to graduate from the School of Education. My father grew up in Ann Arbor. My grandfather managed the Kresge drugstore at the corner of North University and State Street for about 30 years. So Ann Arbor's been a part of my life for a long time. Entering campus as a 17-year-old in the fall of 1989, I was a bit overwhelmed with everything I experienced. But I walked out 4 years later with a degree in hand, and most importantly, an incredible foundation in principles of engineering in general and chemical engineering specifically that have really served me throughout my career. I want to give a special shout out. I can't do this without my friend, fraternity brother, coworker, groomsman, and fellow class of 1993 alum, Michael Shakta. We met freshman year in the brand new chemistry building on Central Campus. We were the first people to take a class there. I think it was 8 o'clock on a Monday morning. In the back of the room at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. Through 8:30 a.m. classes and all-nighters doing open-ended problems, to working for Professor Fogler and Dr. Montgomery during the summer of '92, we experienced so much and created so many memories together over those 4 years and many more in the years since. In fact, the summer I spent working in that lab is one of my best memories from U of M, and it has me eternally wondering why I didn't spend every summer of my college career in Ann Arbor. I would encourage everyone to do that. Mike and I talked a lot about the formal and informal education that we received here on North Campus. We agree that the passion, intelligence, and approachability of the faculty was a key ingredient to the Michigan experience. I can still rattle off the professors' names, and I'll try to Burns, Linderman, Fogler, Carnahan, Briggs, Paulson, Savage, Donahue, Curl. All of those names still Carveris, all of them still resonate with memories when I bring them up. And of course, Levi Thompson. I couldn't forget him in his senior class. So 2 specific memories I wanted to talk about really stand out from my time here. And Mike and I talk about these a lot. The first is our sophomore year, calling a poor engineer who worked for Dow Chemical in Freeport, Texas. We had an open-ended problem that was the challenge, and Mike Ferrante, wherever you are, you know this too. The challenge was extracting magnesium from seawater to make magnesium for bicycle frames. This poor engineer, once his name got around, he fielded calls from every single group that was working on that project. And it was for literally a week straight. I felt really bad for this guy because literally every group called him to try and help us. It was our first open-ended problem. None of us really knew what we were doing, so we were trying to rely on some professionals to help us through that and pick his brain. The second is really kind of a combination of memories, just being on the North Campus computing lab. We didn't have computers in our rooms. We had to go to the computer lab, pulling all-nighters to complete our open-ended problems, our capstone projects, surrounded by all the other chemical engineering teams. It was literally all chemical engineers all night in these computer labs. I'll remind you, this is before Starbucks. We did have an espresso royale, I think, that came in senior year. So, and Little Caesars, thank you. Little Caesars got built our senior year too. So that was, at least we had some food there. In all seriousness, though, upon reflection, those open-ended problems, which were kind of a cornerstone of the curriculum here, were really vital in helping us think about problems and projects in the quote-unquote real world. In a certain way, your entire life is a series of open-ended problems. Your career, your everything about it. So really helping us think through, I think that was a really strong foundation. Now, Sharon already covered most of my career. I've traveled all around the world. The culture and diversity I experienced during my time at U of M really gave me that thirst for global culture and knowledge. Of course, wherever I went in the world, there were former Wolverines not that far away. So I think we've all experienced that no matter where you go, that Block M, that bond is pretty strong. So now I'm proud to work for GM for the last 23 years, from internet marketing to telematics to product planning to public policy, where we now get to talk about leading GM and the country into an all-electric transportation future. Of course, all these roles haven't required me to design a distillation column. Thank you, Dr. Burns. Or calculate the result of an Navier-Stokes equation, or even remember what a Reynolds number is. But the foundation laid by my time at Michigan has enabled all of my experiences and played a large role in who I am and how I approach issues and discussions. I'm truly honored to receive this award and be recognized for my work promoting electric transportation. I enjoy my role at GM and relish the opportunity to work on such large-scale, important issues, hard technical issues, and honestly difficult societal issues. I hope that I can continue to come back and share my thoughts and experiences with future students and faculty. No one's journey through life and career is a straight line. This is what I told the students this morning. Like all careers, mine has certainly taken some twists and blind turns. But in the end, it's led me to here today, and I'm grateful that I can call myself forever a Michigan Chemie alum. Thank you, and Glow Blue. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Mike. No Starbucks in 1993, and not really a World Wide Web either. Well, there was one, but most of us didn't have it. This year, we are thrilled to celebrate our 125th year as a Department of Chemical Engineering. That's just amazing to me. You've seen some of the slides, I guess, during lunch that we're going through. I want to highlight just a few things. We are thrilled to have top-ranked graduate and undergraduate programs. Our graduate program has been ranked in the top 10 now for 3 years in a row. We are thrilled about that. We're so proud of our students. We have right now 173 chemical engineering PhD students doing research in our department. 38% of them are women, 19% underrepresented minority. And this year, on our incoming class, we have 50 new PhD students, which is an all-time record. We currently have 247 undergraduate students in our department. Over half of them are female. 15% underrepresented minority, which is a little bit better than the industry numbers, but a place where we are making efforts to do better. Our students have done so many amazing things. Our AICHE student organization has been recognized with the Outstanding Student Chapter Award for the umpteenth year in a row, and will be recognized again with the Outstanding Student Chapter at the upcoming AICHE meeting. Our the University of Michigan Concrete Canoe team that our chemies participate on placed third in the nation. Our Chemi Cube team formed to compete in AICHE programs, and this team created a 1 cubic foot chemical plant and promoted it through a 1-minute ad, poster, and a 20-minute Shark Tank style pitch to a panel of mock investors. And many of our students are receiving all sorts of recognition and award for their leadership, their service, their research here at Michigan. This year, the College of Engineering started a new thing that they never did before, which is to have 3-minute thesis presentations by PhD students in the College of Engineering. Hundreds of students sent in applications to do their 3-minute thesis presentation, wrote their title and an abstract, and then 100-something of those were selected to do this over a series of days. They whittled it down to 26 finalists, of which 9 are chemical engineers. That's a really good percentage. And so right now they're doing their final final presentations right now and a little bit throughout the afternoon. So we'll see how many of them win the big award, but we're really, really proud of them. Our seniors have participated in many capstone organizations. Capstone projects this year. And they're very involved in outreach programs to K through 12 students to increase interest in engineering, chemical engineering. Our Chemi Car team placed 4th in regionals and was recognized last year for their exceptional collaboration and support for other teams when the competition experienced challenges. Apparently, there was some kind of issue with all of the chemicals that all of the schools needed to send to one receiving center in Phoenix. Is that where we were last year? Yes. Phoenix. And they all sent them there, but apparently the place was closed on a Saturday and they couldn't get the chemicals. And so our undergrad students went around and helping and sharing with everyone. So they won the Team Spirit Award from AICHE. Let's see. So our graduate student Club KEGS led multiple outreach programs with K through 12 students. Engineering on-ramp, and this is a picture down here of Assistant Professor Shiwen Gong's lab. They run something called Engineering on-ramp, which introduces opportunities for the next generation of STEM scholars. This is a snapshot of our faculty today. Could all the faculty who are here just stand up and say hi? I see a few up here. Look, faculty all around the room. are even as some people have retired and continue to retire, we've been hiring. They have 9 new faculty in the last 5 years, and we're going to be hiring even more this year. And the faculty are just doing so extraordinarily well. There's so many things to highlight, and we'd be going on all day long if I bragged about everybody. So I'll just brag about a few. Lola Eniola Adefeso, who is a professor in our department, she's also the Associate Dean for Graduate and Professional Education in the College of Engineering. She was named the Venema Professor of Chemical Engineering for her outstanding leadership and research in the field of vascular targeted drug delivery. This is a big honor to receive an endowed professorship. And the last person and only person to ever hold that professorship was Professor Scott Fogler. So it's especially meaningful that Lola gets to carry on the name of that professorship. And also Lola, aside from many awards this year, she was elected fellow of the AICHE. She also is a director at AICHE. Very exciting news that was announced just a couple weeks ago. Our department led and won a grant proposal to the National Science Foundation for a $30 million Science and Technology Center on complex particle systems. There are 7 of us here who are involved in this at the beginning, but there'll be opportunities for many more faculty to be involved. It will support the research of many, many dozens of graduate students. And it's led by our very own Professor Nick Kotoff, who I'm sure isn't here because I think he's flying somewhere back from Japan or something right now. But this is a huge thing for us. These science and technology centers are very hard to get. They start with hundreds of pre-proposals and applications, and they finally awarded 4. And the goal of this big research center is to build on the science and engineering know-how that we've developed in the area of nanoscience and technology in this department, and bring it closer to being able to do advanced manufacturing using nanotechnology. So we're super excited about that. From your mouth to God's ears, as my mother would say. Yes, does that mean a new building? One day. We wish. I want to mention also we have a new program in the department that we call Operation Greenhouse to try to grow and nurture new high-risk, high-reward collaborations among faculty and their student research groups. In various areas. The internal funding for this was provided by our alumnus and advisory board member, who was also 2 years ago our department's Alumni Merit Award winner, Rhonda Germany Ballantyne. She funded the Rhonda Germany Ballantyne Research Fund in Chemical Engineering, which is providing the support for this program. So I want to thank Rhonda for that. We just funded the first one, the first such program on antibody-based technology for non-invasive precision gene silencing in the brain. Assistant Professor Becky Lindsay, is Becky here? Is Becky here somewhere? I don't know if Becky's here. Right now, she might be teaching. Becky is in a few weeks, a month and a half, at the upcoming AICHE meeting, is going to receive the 2023 AICHE Computational Molecular Science and Engineering Forum's Young Investigator Award, which recognizes outstanding computational research in chemical engineering. Let's see. On the wrong page here. Mark Burns received funding from Helen of Troy to refine a solution to rapidly detect lead in water, and his team is supplying portable sensors to collaborators to integrate them within their device and field. Our team down here, Brian Goldsmith, Nikolla Singh, Sulyo Linich, and Jovan Kamchev. I saw Jovan somewhere, and he's teaching now. And Nikolla, did I see Nikolla? Okay. Timing is everything. And Sulyo's on here, and Brian's on sabbatical, so they're invisible. Faculty are invisible when they're on sabbatical usually. But this is really exciting. They received a very competitive grant from the WM Keck Foundation, a $1.3 million grant to improve urea fertilizer production and reduce CO2 emissions. Professor Shiwen Gong, is Shiwen still here? She's not still here. So Shiwen, last year, Shiwen, she's her third year here as an assistant professor. Last year, Shiwen was one of 3 people on the planet to receive the first and maybe only physical sciences research award from Amazon, which was a $150,000 prize to promising young researchers for their predictions of important future technologies. And just last week in Nature, it was announced that she's shortlisted for Nature's Inspiring Women in Science Award, which is sponsored by Estee Lauder. Sheila works at Electronic Materials and works on such things as wearable electronics. In the this coming winter, Shiwen's going to teach a new section of Engine 100. Engine 100, you may remember, is a course that all the freshmen take, and there's many sections of them. She's going to teach a section on wearable electronics and trying to recruit more students into our chemical engineering major. Assistant Professor Juha Min, Juha's here. I know she is. I saw her. There she is. Juha received an award for a $600,000 V-Scholar grant for cancer research. She developed a novel way to coat medical implants with materials that can remove and prevent bacterial infections, providing a low-cost solution for long-term antibacterial protection. So congratulations to Juha. New research by Chemie Professor Jörg Lahan, who's also the director of our Biointerfaces Institute, has innovated the creation of lab-grown mini brains by eliminating the use of animal cells. We're also super excited that we have five of our assistant professors won NSF Career Awards in the last roughly year. The NSF Career Award, again, the National Science Foundation, this is like the most prestigious award that you can win as an assistant professor. And the college this past year won roughly a dozen. We have 5. I'm just saying. I don't want to brag. So that's Andrew Ullman, Brian Goldsmith, Jovan Kamchev, Andre Leonard, and Nikolla Singh. And so we're super proud of them. We also have new staff positions in the department, and I want to introduce them. We have Sheila Waterhouse, who's our Director of Strategic Initiatives and Corporate Relations. Wave hi. Welcome to Sheila, who started this summer. We also have Danielle Martinez, who's here, our new Alumni Engagement Coordinator. Danielle started like 4 minutes ago. And soon to be starting in the next few weeks is Isabel Inad, who is going to be our DEI program coordinator. So we're so excited that you guys are part of our department. And our department, we have 26 research active faculty working in so many different areas. But there's really, if you look at a higher view, there's these 3 major areas that we're focusing on in a strategic way. One is engineering the future. That's the next one. Engineering the future of human health from benchtop to bedside, benchtop to bedside. Engineering our way to net zero, and engineering matter by design. And I've asked 3 of our faculty, Professor Thurber and Professor Nikolla and Professor Liu, to talk to you a little bit about their research that they're doing in each of these 3 areas. So I'm going to ask Greg, are you going to kick us off in human health? All right, thank you.
Absolutely. But before you step down, I just wanted to announce to the audience here that I would like to congratulate Professor Glotzer. She was recently awarded one of 23 for the Clairvett Citation Laureate in Physics for her work on the role of entropy in self-assembly. So an extremely prestigious award. All right, thank you. So again, thank you for that introduction. I'm Professor Greg Thurber. I'm currently the grad chair for the chemical engineering program, and I'm excited to be here and share some of our work with you to show you some of the things that are going on at the university. And so I decided to take this time to share a story from our lab, and I really want to thank, I don't have an acknowledgement slide, but I really want to thank, because any of you who know in academia who actually does the work, it's the grad students and the undergrads, and so I really want to recognize them for some of the excellent work that they've been doing. So our lab works on drug screening and drug development, and we're trying to move the pipeline from a screening approach to a drug design. So what does that mean? Well, again, I'm a professor. I'm excited about teaching, so I promise I'll be brief, but I'll share a little bit about some of our work on antibody drug conjugates. And so these molecules are monoclonal antibodies, which you may be familiar from vaccines, that bind to particular targets. And in this case, they bind to the surface of cancer cells. And what we do is we can conjugate a very potent chemotherapeutic onto that molecule. And the whole idea behind this is to target chemotherapy to the cancer cells to avoid some of the horrible side effects that occur and also develop more effective treatments. Now, this has been developed and been invested by the pharmaceutical companies for many decades. There's been billions of dollars literally over the past few decades. However, although the concept is very simple, the application of this tends to be very difficult. And so some of this research started, I won't give you the whole history, maybe back in the 1950s, but significant investment from the 1980s. The first drug was approved in 2000. But notice this timeline here. There's a single drug, one drug that's approved, and a very large additional investment into this field, and then that drug was withdrawn. So over the first decade, they went from one approved drug down to zero. And so this is billions of dollars wasted. You don't have to be an executive to know that's a poor investment. So what's going wrong? Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to share this story with you is, I think one thing that will resonate with you is that chemical engineers can do everything. And so what do you do when you have an existential crisis like this? Well, you reach for your nearest copy of Elements of Chemical Engineering by Scott Fogler. So we grabbed this book, we looked at what could be going wrong. If all this investment went into here, why are these drugs failing in the clinic? And without going into all the technical details, it has to do with reaction and diffusion. And so how do these drugs distribute in the tumors? Well, their binding rates, the rate at which they bind to cancer cells, is extremely fast relative to diffusion into the tissue. So as soon as the drug, if you administer it by IV, as soon as it escapes a blood vessel, it binds to the first layer of cells and gets trapped there. And so over time, you might have more and more drugs entering the tissue, but at some point, these drugs get internalized by the cancer cells. That's how they release the payload. They get internalized, they release the payload, that's how it kills the cells. So over time, eventually, all the drug is being internalized by the cancer cells, and no matter how long you wait, those cells are chewing up the drug, and it will never reach cells deeper in the tissue. And I'm showing some images of that in the bottom. These are slices of tumors where the blood vessels are labeled in red and the drug is labeled in green. These were collected in our lab. And so no matter how long you wait after the injection of the therapeutic, it never reaches a majority of the cells. There's a lot of black in that image where there was no drug. And again, just to relate this to chemical engineering, you can quantify this by a Thiele modulus. So literally, if everyone wants to turn to page 750 in their books, you can find the math behind this research. Now, what did we do from this? Well, we collaborated with some clinicians. In this case, we collaborated with some clinicians at Stanford. And the reason we did it there was they were taking some of these monoclonal antibodies and putting fluorescent dyes on them, injecting them into patients so that during surgery, you can remove all the cancer cells. You don't leave any positive margins, as they're known, where there's some residual cancer cells in patients. But the excellent part about this is they take the tumor out, and now you have a human tumor where you can look at how the drugs distribute. And one of the things that I want to point out is these are not just in animal models. So the images on the left are some of the ones we collected in our lab. And on the right, this is in a human head and neck cancer. And again, what you can see is these drugs labeled in green here don't penetrate very far into these nests of tumor cells. And so this is not just a problem in the lab, this is a problem in the clinic. And this has really gone under the radar at pharmaceutical companies for many years. And without going into all the details, typically you have either a small molecule drug and they don't have these distribution problems, or if you just have a monoclonal antibody, they're very well tolerated. You can give huge doses and the patients are fine. But with this drug class, you have a very potent, a very toxic molecule on there. So you end up giving a very small dose, and so therefore it can't penetrate, it can't reach all the cells within the tissue. So this was the major problem, and this was very underappreciated in the pharmaceutical industry. No one was talking about this at the time, but we thought, well, what can we use? How can we use our chemical engineering training to help overcome this problem? And so one of the things we decided to do was to spike in more antibody. So as I just mentioned, you can give a lot of antibody to a patient and it doesn't cause toxicity. You can't give more of the antibody drug conjugate. But what that does is it partially blocks binding to some of the cells, allowing the drug to penetrate deeper into the tissue. And when we did this, in animal models, we see that the distribution becomes much better. And for the sake of time, I won't get into the details, but also the efficacy, the response rate of these tumors, it gets much better as well. So I presented this at a conference, and then I was contacted by the chief medical officer of a company called Immunomedics. And they said, we are developing this new ADC. It's in the clinic. It's showing some very promising results, but it's very different than all the other ADCs on the market. But we think what you're describing may be happening with our drug. So this initiated a collaboration. And we published this just last year, where we showed what they did was they used a very low potency drug, very counterintuitive, opposite of what the field was doing. But what that allows you to do is give much more of the drug in patients. And in fact, this is given at one of the highest doses, 20 mg per kg over each cycle. And what we showed is, at that high dose, it penetrates, it reaches all the cells in the tissue. And that's why that drug was being so effective. And so this was one of the collaborations with industry. We have many that we could show how these drugs are working. And at another conference, Joe Ponte came up to me. He works at Immunogen, and he said, I think we're seeing something similar with our drugs. Do you want to collaborate? And we said yes. And again, without going into the details, they had two different drugs here with a low and high potency payload. And when you have the lower potency payload, you can give a higher dose that reaches more cells and you get much better tumor responses. Whereas if you have something that's more toxic, more potent, which the industry was really trying to develop because that works very well on a Petri dish, but there's no transport limitations there. And so those aren't as effective. The other thing they showed was, well, it depends on the patient. And this is where we start to get into personalized medicine. If you have a patient with a very low expression level, well, now your less toxic drug isn't toxic enough. And here you need the more potent compound to get a better response. And so this allows us to start applying these engineering principles to identify which patient populations are going to best respond to these agents. So, to finish up here, back to this timeline, the first decade, this is just one drug that was pulled from the market, and this was in a blood cancer. They're actually much easier to treat, leukemias and lymphomas, not in solid tumors. What does it look like today? Well, just within the past few years, we've seen a dramatic spike in the number of FDA-approved drugs for cancer therapy. And what we're very excited about is these blue lines here, because these are for solid tumors, things like breast cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer, the more prevalent, but also the more difficult to treat types of cancer. So we're seeing a spike in the approvals there. And Since our collaborations, both of these drugs were FDA approved. So Elahere here is approved for treatment in ovarian cancer, and Trodelvy, that was the first drug I showed, is in triple-negative breast cancer. So now that we've identified transport limitations, which all of you should know from your classes as one of the key limiting factors in efficacy, this field is going to continue to grow, develop, and will be much more efficient at developing these drugs. So I wanted to share that story of how, again, chemical engineers can solve a lot of the world's problems, including in engineering human health. So with that, after sharing that story, I would like to introduce our next faculty member, Professor Eranda Nikolla, who we recruited to come back here more recently to expand our thriving research in energy and catalysis.
Thank you very much, Greg. It's a great place to actually share some of my thoughts on net zero, but I want to start by saying that I'm also an alum of this department. So when Mike got up here and said how excited it was about being here and meeting with all the rest of the alums and going back into those stories, I do the same every time I run into someone that went to school with me here. That's why this place is so special. So coming back as a faculty reminds me every day why I am a Wolverine. So I second that, Mike. So my area of research and why I'm here today is to talk to you about net zero. This is the reason why I'm here as a faculty in chemical engineering, specifically in the area of catalysis and energy. I have a very naive story that I'd like to share. When I graduated from undergrad, my father worked for General Motors. He was a mechanical engineer, and my thought growing up in the Detroit area, I was going to come and work for the automotive industry because at the time, they had good, support systems internally at the automotive industry. And if your father works there, you could have gotten a job. But what I realized very quickly as I was doing undergraduate research is that internal combustion engines were too mechanical for my thoughts. I was a chemical engineer, and I liked this idea of fuel cells. So I went into graduate school thinking I was going to put fuel cells in the car. Well, that hasn't happened that 20 plus years after, but we are putting batteries in cars, so there is a moving forward in that respect. So we are trying to move forward in minimizing our biggest challenge at the moment, right? So if you look here, are these working? Yeah. So our biggest challenge in net zero area right now are carbon dioxide emissions, right? So these are some data that have been reported, and as you see, as a function of time, you see the rate of growth of CO2 emissions, right? So in the 2000s, that rate really exponentially has grown. And that has become a significant issue, a huge challenge for the decade, right? We have to figure out a way to alleviate the processes that we currently have and minimize these emissions. And us as chemical engineers, I believe, are the forefront of resolving this challenge. So what are some of the potential solutions to this problem, right? Well, to use renewable, this doesn't come out right, okay? Renewable, I don't know, yeah. So renewable energy sources, and these are, so basically replacing renewable fossil fuels with clean renewable sources such as the sun, solar, or windmill, right? The way to do that, though, is to use, these are intermittent energy sources. So we would have to figure out a way to store as we use this energy that's intermittent. And ways to do this is batteries, so we can store them by chemical reaction and storing them in batteries, or we can actually generate synthetic fuels from the emitted CO2. So basically we can have a closed CO2 carbon cycle where we can capture what's already in the environment, be able to use the intermittent energy to generate fuels that we can currently, or chemicals that we can use for our daily activities. So think about energy storage in two ways, through battery storage or synthetic fuels. And the battery storage, the biggest issue that the challenge that we have right now is obviously fast storing, long storage in the batteries, but also having a grid infrastructure that will be able to provide the necessary electrons that are needed for revolutionizing our automotive industry overnight to driving in electric vehicles, which is great. However, we have to think about it. Synthetic fuels, on the other side, do have their own challenges of being able to effectively and economically capture CO2 in the environment and be able to convert that into. So these are the challenges that us as chemical engineers, especially here at the University of Michigan, are aiming to do. And this is not just Eranda sitting up here and doing the whole research, right? So we are a team, a very strong team here at the University of Michigan on net zero, where combines expertise in experiments, theory, and systems. And these are the faculty that we have all involved in the net zero emissions. So some of the areas, as I said, that we work on, combining efforts from experiments to theory to systems design, involves ways to use biomass as a renewable energy source, generate hydrogen from water through electrolysis, recycle to CO2 into fuels and chemicals, store. We have some efforts on energy storage through batteries, and also use sunlight directly to chemically recycle CO2 or generate hydrogen or other fuels through energy extensive processes. So this is overall what we do in the net zero team here at the University of Michigan Chemical Engineering. Specifically, what my group is currently focused on, we have some efforts where we're again trying to recycle CO2 electrochemically into something useful. And we are part of a Department of Energy center where it's looking at using electrochemical all solid state cells to convert CO2 and water into syngas, and that to then convert into chemicals that we can use. And again, the team there has a part that captures CO2 and directly converts it into usable fuels and chemicals. We have some work that is ongoing on the next generation battery technology, so things that hopefully can solve some of these issues years down the line, but we're fascinated with the idea that we can push at the academic level, push some of the boundaries with energy storage and batteries. Obviously, we also are thinking about other sources of storage, like chemical storage in hydrogen. So this is electrolysis, designing materials for electrolyzers, effective, economically viable materials that are converting water, for example, into hydrogen at ambient conditions. As mentioned earlier, I think Sharon highlighted this. We're also part of the big center compass for complex particle systems. And our job there is to see how we can design at the particle level effective electrodes for energy storage and conversion. So a team at the University of Michigan and also outside institutions have come together to effectively design, again, the next generation. We're thinking ahead of the time and trying to figure out ways that we can use recyclable materials that are not costly, right? Right now, what you see in even batteries, right? The challenges of cobalt being one of the materials that is used in those batteries, or fuel cells, platinum or iridium being some of the expensive catalysts. We're looking into ways of minimizing through the build hierarchy of materials and minimizing the cost of making these systems in order for them to be mass produced, right? Something that we can actually use to replace the current systems. We are also very passionate about resolving some of the damage that we have already done, right? Everybody here on the table is plastics has been something that has revolutionized the way we live today, right? The commodities that we have. However, recycling of plastic has become an issue. So here, our team was funded from the National Science Foundation to look at catalytic pathways, economical pathways of being able to catalytically recycle plastic into their monomers that they can be reused again for other applications. And that, last but not least, I wanted to highlight our other effort here, and it's a team effort, another center funded by the Department of Energy, where now we can actually put chemical reactions on chips. It's a futuristic way of thinking about distributed chemical plants or ways that we generate chemicals and fuels and not centralized. So is it a way that we can design now that we have an ability to control modularly catalytic reactions? And here we're using stimuli such as light and electrons that hopefully with advancement in intermittent energy, in renewable energy sources, that we can use that to drive some of these reactions. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer any detailed questions. I didn't know how much detail I was going to go through these projects today, but I'm happy to address any questions afterwards. But I would like to leave some time to Professor Albert Leo to talk about matter on demand.
Hi, everyone. I'm Albert. Oh, it's playing. Okay. So it's a big shoes to fill for me to introduce some of our research in matter on demand. I joined the department this time last year, so I'm literally one of the newest professors in the department. And I am not a Michigan alum. However, my wife was a Michigan alum, so there's some connections here. So our lab has the name of Laboratory of Emergent and Galvanically Orchestrated Systems, or LEGOS. As the name suggests, we love building Legos, right? But like we consider ourselves the builders of the next generation of electronic materials. And we specifically draw inspiration from how nature constructs biological materials. In the sense that biological materials are not only constructed from molecular design, but these proteins and DNAs are actually wrapped around and form these organelles that are higher order structures, and these organelles get self-organized into cells, and cells are, of course, being treated as the fundamental building block of all life, right? So if you think about how artificial materials are made today, a lot of the times we do have these molecular design, nanoscopic design, but very quickly we have scaled up, and in part, due to chemical engineers such as us, but we have scaled up these materials into a bulk of material, and we're complaining that these materials are not as reconfigurable or adaptive as biomaterials. And I think this is part of the reason, is that we're missing sort of these intermediate length scale in which we can control these materials and have control checkpoints and so forth. So our laboratory a couple years ago have come up with this concept of colloidal electronics, where we literally merge together the mobility that comes with a colloidal system that is dispersed in some sort of medium with the modern electronic materials, where you can wrap around these colloidal particles with and construct programmable material. And when you merge these two together, what you get is basically these particulate-based systems that are kind of like artificial cells that can make our sensors and detectors and information transfer networks smarter. Okay, so of course, we're not the first ones to consider making autonomous devices that at sort of like the very small scale. Chemists and material scientists have long come up with these concept of molecular machine or active matter, where things can do very complicated functions. One of the missing things, we think, for all of these systems is its modularity. Of course, a true modular system, such as our personal computers and laptops and cell phones, are represented on this side of the story, which is electrical engineering, right? Over the past 2 decades, people have thought long about how do you shrink down electronic devices, and part of these works are actually done in our electrical engineering department here at Michigan, which is these smart dust and things that are even smaller. So our group sort of thinks we want to push this even further by linking what we know in material science and chemistry with the modern electrical engineering or electrical materials, and think whether we have a way to engineer these electronic devices that are truly biological cellular scale. And of course, this sort of bridges the gap between that enables single cell communication from a biological system to an artificial system. And so we think there's a lot of room for us to play in this middle ground at the cellular scale. Okay, so our group is constructed into sort of these 4 thrusts that are designed to solve the 4 fundamental challenges that we see lying ahead for colloidal electronics or colloidal electronic matter research. First, we think about how do we get energy on board of these cellular scale devices, and we use what is called photovoltaic or hydrovoltaic energy harvesting, as opposed to traditional photovoltaic energy harvesting. We also think long and hard about how do we enable the communication between artificial cellular systems at this scale. Traditional electronic devices communicate with each other using Wi-Fi signals, Bluetooth signals, these electromagnetic waves. However, this type of communication is fundamentally limited by what is called antenna theory, which means the shorter the antenna goes, the distance at which this information can be meaningfully transferred gets dramatically decreased. So in fact, if you look at biology, one of the real ways that biological cells communicate with each other is through hormones or biochemicals. So we use something from biology again and turn the energy we generated on board into some sort of chemical signal that enables this information transfer, not only from one artificial cell to another, but maybe from one artificial system to a biological system, and that's something we're also working on. The third aspect of the lab works on how do we, now that we have generated these chemical signal, how do we detect it and then manipulate those information, store these information digitally and be able to manipulate on board. And so one of the challenges here, again, is energy, right? So energy at the microscopic scale is very scarce. So not only do we have to think about how to generate more of these energy, we have to also think about how do you manipulate and be able to use these energy in the more sustainable way. So traditional silicon-based electronics, while it's very powerful and is essentially powering our industry today, are no longer the solution when you're considering doing computation at these kind of cellular scale. We have to use different kind of electrical element and circuitry to enable the same kind of functions that we see and take for given at our macroscopic scale. The last portion of the lab, which is actually I'm going to give you a very small vignette of our research here, which is to consider how do we assemble these cellular devices together into larger scale materials, right? So this is the idea where we acknowledge that individual cell-sized devices are never going to be as smart or complex as our laptops. However, by leveraging what is called emergent behavior, potentially we can use the fact that these cellular devices are working with each other collaboratively and bring out larger scale tasks that no individual devices can perform by themselves in a distributed kind of manner. Okay, so this story is actually very, very simple. And this is literally one of the dumbest particles that we have made in our lab, which it literally is a flat plastic disc with a little platinum underneath. Okay, so if I put this disc at the air-water interface and put a little bit of chemical fuel in the liquid phase, in this case, hydrogen peroxide, this is a very simple chemical reaction. Hydrogen peroxide catalyzed by platinum and generates an oxygen bubble. With one single particle, as you can see, it starts to generate this oxygen bubble. That is actually a video playing. The idea here is that as the bubble grows bigger and bigger, it's blocking access of more chemical fuel into the platinum catalyst. Therefore, this is a self-inhibiting reaction. And this process will basically stop. However, if you put two of these same particles together at the air-water interface, what's going to happen is actually what is known as the Cheerios effect or a lateral capillary effect, which is the same force that drives the two Cheerios chip together in your milk bowl every morning. But what happens here is that if you put another same particle at the air-water interface, they're going to attract each other due to this Cheerios effect. But as they grow, the bubble will actually merge into a single bubble in the middle, simply because as two bubbles merge, they will generate the same volume, but then the overall surface area gets decreased. So the surface energy drops, right? So we started to understand the process, but what happens is that when the platinum with the one single bubble in the middle, now your platinum catalyst sees more hydrogen peroxide, so generates more oxygen and make this middle bubble bigger and bigger, and eventually the bubble will pop. As the bubble pops, the two particles get jerked apart, and this entire process repeats itself. So what is shown here are actual experimental data that this process gives this very rhythmic beating behavior. So this is actually a sped up video of this entire process just to convince you that this process is highly synchronized and repeatable. Okay, so you might want to ask, what is this good for? Well, we don't know what is this good for. But so we started to talk to our electrical engineer friends. So apparently there is this challenge in electrical engineering for very small scale systems. It's hard to make these kind of electrical signal in an oscillatory form. So, and this is precisely something that we can do. We just simply turn this simple particle into a little micro battery. In this case, two dissimilar metal generates a little fuel cell, just generates a constant voltage. But what happens when you have these chemomechanical oscillator, they actually starts to beat, and then the electrical voltage turned from a constant voltage into an oscillatory one. So, there's some sort of use case for this and solved sort of a challenge in electrical engineering at the microscopic scale. I just wanted to highlight this kind of behavior is highly dependent on the design of the particle. You can actually get very exotic kind of behavior in this like asymmetric design, and the same behavior can be used to scaled up for multiple particle system to realize synchronization for more than just two particles, right? So and this is like data shown for multiple particle systems as you scale the system up. So I want to sort of stop here and just say that even though these are some of the dumbest particles we can fabricate in the lab, this starts to remind us, like synchrony that you see in biology, and perhaps this is something that we really associate true life form with. So you can see these synchronized beating behavior in not only these microorganisms, but of course in our human heart, right? So the reason that we are alive is because of the synchronized beating of heart cell. Of course, we're not saying that we have made an artificial heart. However, there is something that really motivating about the fact that using these very dumb particles, by leveraging these emergent behavior, we start to recapitulate these really complex biological systems and start to allow us to ask the questions that, what enables the synchrony inside the human heart, and how do we fix it if it doesn't? And with that, I'll just say, what motivated us going forward is, in this specific case, thinking about how do we start to make our particles a little bit more complicated, and again, use these emergent behavior to bring out even crazier function that nobody has ever seen, even in the truly complex biological system. With that, I'll just thank you for your attention, and have a nice day.
I'd like to thank Professor Thurber, Professor Nikolla, and Professor Liu for their presentations, and thank all of you for coming today. We have a couple of student volunteers who are going to, at 1:30, give some, anybody who wants to walk through North Campus, go over to Dow, explore the labs together. And they'll meet up by the elevators here at 1:30. We have some PhD students with their research still in the back, and the Chemi Car students. So if you haven't had a chance to talk to any students, please feel free to go do that. Mix and mingle. And thank you for being here, and go blue.